we'll be talking about running self-managed Kubernetes clusters in production in AWS. So we are both from CompareTheMarket. We are from the cloud platform team, and we specialize in creating, running, and maintaining our own compute platforms for product teams. Yeah, so Matt will be going through a little bit of history. So how did we come about doing what we are doing today? And then he will be deep diving into why we did what we did and what the tools we are using to build the cluster. And then I'll be going over how our experience was running the clusters in production for over 2 years and what we have in store for the future. So I'll hand it over to Matt.
Hey everyone, I'm just going to be giving you some context on a little bit of our history, how we got to where we are now, and where we came from essentially. Right, so we started off with a legacy product, CloudCat. It's still in operation currently. It is a Terraform, Go, Bash script homebrewed service deployment. Essentially, it deploys containers onto EC2 directly. For obvious reasons, this is very costly for us as a company. Resource utilization. It's very, very slow to deploy. It takes nearly 20 minutes per environment, so quite a long time. And as its legacy, the more and more we grow as a company, the less and less experience we have using that tool. So the company made the decision to move away from this method and use Kubernetes. And we enlisted the help of a third party to help us get set up with Kubernetes. At the time, none of our team really had any experience with Puppet. Our experience is in Chef. However, the company decided to go ahead with installing Kubernetes. Unfortunately, as a platform, it wasn't very good. It wasn't very stable. We found that we had a lot of instability with 500 errors. One team that we had on at the time was moaning because it was third party recommended. We found it very difficult to actually debug this situation. As I mentioned, there was a lot of lack of knowledge. Like I said, it was set up by a third party, so we didn't have the understanding of the configuration, and it made it very, very difficult to debug at any time. At the time, also, our team was only a size of 3, so it wasn't very big. So we didn't really have time to really develop. We was always firefighting, which was a problem for our team at the time. So again, the company decided to move away from that iteration and go directly using COPS. We did evaluate a few options at the time, and I think as a company, financially and community based, we decided to use COPS going forward. It was definitely the best option for us. Unfortunately, our team actually downsized at the start. We actually went to 2 engineers, but the reason why we continued to pursue with this was because we needed to fix the problems I've already aforementioned. The good thing with COPS and with the new setup, it gave us the ability to do blue-green. It also gave us the ability to update our clusters versionings very easily because we tried creating it as generic as possible at the time, so it meant we could do all of our clusters update at one time. With later versions of Kubernetes, we was able to provide some more functionality and features to the product team and small amount of product teams that were entering or at least deploying onto our platform. So, for example, permission access, self-service tools, memory scaling, PR-based deployments, and these were just a few of the features and functionalities that we were actually able to provide early on. Our cluster is now very much stable. We don't see any issues with that. Teams are very, very happy with the user experience. And I think a couple of things that have helped us with that is obviously with the knowledge of the team. COPS is very well documented. It's got very well, it's community backed, and therefore our team were able to pick up the knowledge and the requirements needed to maintain our clusters. And as I mentioned earlier, we did start off as a team as 2, but we have now increased to a team of 10. So we've really been able to drive the production cluster forward. We've introduced an SDEP for testing, and we've got a lot more structure in terms of a BA and delivery manager. Okay, that's a little bit of context on our history. I'll move on to why we chose COPS and why we chose the services we're using currently. So we use AWS, but AWS for us is a legacy decision. So we already have a great partnership with AWS, so we would not move away from them, which just makes sense for us. As I mentioned earlier, we chose COPS for many reasons, but I think we can steal a line from them and use the easiest way to get a production grade Kubernetes cluster up and running. I think that speaks for itself, right? Obviously, it's open source, so it saved us a lot of money as a company. We didn't have to enlist the help of a third party to help us install it, which was great for us. And it also gives us the ability to manage the whole entire life cycle of the cluster, which was a big thing for us. We use Nginx as our ingress controller purely for the fact that it's probably the most popular ingress controller out there, and we also use it currently for our previous cluster and for CloudCat, so it made sense. We use K8s as our AWS permission manager. I personally think it's the best tool out there, other than for self-managed, that is. So for us, we evaluated that, and that was great for us. Our monitoring is consistent of Logstash, Splunk, Prometheus, and one of our own homebrewed log exporters. It works for us. It's custom built, so it kind of works for our setup. So that's the reason why we chose those systems. We also use Helm. I really like Helm personally. It really gives us the opportunity to standardize our deployments, put restrictions in place where necessary, and also allows us to add functions and features really easily as and when they're requested by the team. I know you could argue there's a slight bottleneck with that, but it just means that we get to manage what goes into our cluster. We currently are only using, we only have stateless applications deployed onto our cluster. I don't think personally, as a company, we're ready for stateful applications, and we'd also like to discuss whether Kubernetes is the right place for that anyway. Lastly, you can see at the bottom of the slide, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. So a lot of our services that we use are legacy services or stuff that we've used before, like stuff like the Prometheus log exporter, Splunk, Prometheus. They're all services we've used across our estate. So as we have the knowledge and experience in them, it just makes sense to use them, as we already have the understanding of how they're set up. So yeah, that's a little bit of why we chose these. So if you have any questions, obviously at the end. I believe I'm going to pass you back over to Dimple now.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how the whole experience was of running our services in production in Kubernetes. I must say, like, the 90% of it was fun, mostly because it was new to the whole team. We formed a new team, as Matt said before, just to take care of this migration process for the product teams. And currently, we have successfully migrated 90% of our product teams onto Kubernetes from EC2. And what that gave to the product teams in return was they don't have to worry about the overhead of managing their own infrastructure. We do that for them. We do the patching, we do the security upgrades, and all kinds of cluster upgrades are done by us. So that's an overhead we have taken away from the product team so that they can concentrate on building what they do best, which is the front-end services and services for the company in general. From the back of this migration to Kubernetes, we built a very strong team with an in-depth understanding of not just Kubernetes, but also how to do cluster administration from scratch. It gives us as a team more flexibility over the cluster as well, because we use COPS. We get to decide what goes on the cluster, when do we do an upgrade, and how that's different from a managed cluster is because we don't have to wait for a provider to do the upgrade for us. We do it at our own convenience. Same with security patches that we do on the cluster as well. the features that it gave us like an experience of like adding extra features onto the clusters that will help product teams, for example, for them to be able to deploy PR-based images onto the cluster. So that was one of the cool features we released last sprint, and that was so useful for them to like test their features. But like that's a big experience for us as well. And last but not the least, the cost. We have monumentally reduced the cost of running infrastructure on EC2 versus Kubernetes. Like almost 40% of the cost was reduced by migrating these services over to Kubernetes, and that is huge for a company of our size. So I said 90% was fun, but obviously we had, there are pros and cons of running your own self-managed clusters, and one is the high operational overhead on our team itself. So we have around 30 product teams in CompareTheMarket, and for a company of our size, we are supporting 30 product teams with just 6 members of a compute. Like our team is just 6, which means that all those components that Matt had taken you through, they have to be individually managed, upgraded, and maintained by our team. And to do so, you can't just do with any odd cloud platform team member. You need resources with in-depth knowledge of Kubernetes to be able to do so, which means resourcing is a big issue, because if we have to expand the team, we are looking for people with that kind of a skill set, which as you can imagine with the the age of Kubernetes, the number of people in the market with that much in-depth knowledge to actually maintain a cluster from scratch is not a lot. So yeah, we have problems with resourcing as well. And yes, as I said before, while we have the flexibility to do security patching and stuff from our side, we do monitoring as much as we can from our side as well. They are all built by us, and they are all stuck together by us. They are all maintained by us. There is no out-of-box security patches that that we can use. Again, that's time that we could be spent building features for product teams that we are using, doing maintenance work on the cluster. So yeah, so that's what our experience was on running self-managed clusters. That takes me to the next point, which is which people often ask us, is self-managed the right answer? And I genuinely think it depends on your company. It depends on the size of your company. So if you are a small company and you're like starting from scratch with no knowledge of Kubernetes, I would say still probably like managed cluster is your way to go, because you have very little resources to manage the cluster by yourself and your skill sets. The second is the capability of the team, and that is very important, because you need a separate team to build, run, and own these clusters. You can't have that that burden of building the cluster to be on a product team or a dev. You need a separate team to do that, and hence the size of the team that builds, runs, and owns these clusters are important, because that in turn depends on the size of your customer base. So we started with one team that migrated onto Kubernetes, and now when we have like 30 teams versus now when we have to support 30 teams, even us, like with 6 people, we are running out of time and we are running out of resources to do this on a full-time basis. Also, you have to think, what kind of team do you want yours to be? Do you want yours to be a support team that is firefighting and like maintaining a cluster, or do you want your team to be like that gets to build a cluster but integrate cool features into it, like service mesh, and like have aquasec running on it, and like build features that will help product teams ship things faster? So I think that's the decision that you have to make as a company. And lastly, that brings me to the point where are we, or what does our future looks like? So I think it is for my team, I think it's very important that we bring down the operational overhead on the team, so we get more time to do things that we should be doing, which is shipping out features, like crucial features for our customers, and our customers to us is our product team. So hence, we have decided to go with managed Kubernetes. We have kicked off a prototype where we will be, testing out a few features and etc. for EKS. Hopefully, we'll have app mesh on it as well, and maybe like in a few months' time, we'll be back in this platform talking about managed Kubernetes. Who knows? But cool. Thank you. That's our talk for today. And any quick questions?
Thank you, Dimple and Matt, who are joining me right now from the green room or their own homes over on Skype. Let's pull them in now. Hi, folks. Thanks for your patience sitting around waiting to talk to me. Kubernetes is obviously a very, I guess, an emotive topic for quite a lot of technologists. Certainly looking in the Twitch feed. So no doubt lots of interesting stuff to get into talking about there. Before we get onto the Kubernetes story, I'm kind of interested in like. You talk about running Kubernetes on COPS. Like, what of the rest of the AWS ecosystem do you use in your applications? Like, what other bits and pieces are part of your estate? Either of you can answer that.
Yeah, I'm behind. I'm like seeing it a lot later and hearing it a lot later.
Gotcha.
So currently we're using the standard stuff like IAM and S3. What other stuff have we got, Dimple, that would the team use?
We use Mongo. So we have like 4 different pillars. So we start with like infrastructure, observability, then we are the compute team. We have the storage and messaging, and we have what we call the DevX. So infrastructure is like we use anything from like EC2 instances, Lambda, Mongo, Lambda, and for databases they have like MongoDB, RDS, and so CloudWatch, CloudTrail. So like our estate 100% is on AWS. So anything we, so all our services are, like AWS based. I think ours is one of the pillars that are kind of inclined to use open source tools outside AWS, but yeah.
Gotcha. I'm going to go to the Twitch feed where there are a couple of questions. I think you've answered some of them in your talk already, but we might sort of call out particular points of them. I mean, I enjoyed Guns of Brixham's view that every time he sees something to do with, I assume every time they see something to do with Kubernetes, it makes them think of when they used to run WebSphere and then want to cry. I don't know if most people running Kubernetes remember WebSphere, but apparently you do, Dimple. You've run WebSphere. You've had an enterprise career, is what I'm interpreting from that basis.
Yeah, I think I worked with Accenture for over 3 years, and one of the clients over there used WebSphere for their e-commerce, and like. It was a strange role. Like, it was to automate WebSphere in Chef using Chef, as I wouldn't put both of them together today. But
yeah, I did some work probably about 11 years ago with a broadcaster in the UK who were running WebSphere and trying to automate that. But in the days before automation was widely accepted as a thing that you should probably do, and WebSphere just did not play at all. It had no concept of automating other than maybe kind of writing XML files with shell scripts and then hupping the processes and hoping everything worked okay. It was not a good time. It was not a good time at all. And I guess Guns of Brixham is saying that that's their experience of running Kubernetes. Maybe. So Cloud Security Guy asks, what was the biggest if only we knew at any of the stages? Like, what was the thing where you kind of look back and went, oh, if we'd known this thing, this would have made our life way easier? Matt, maybe you can take that one.
It made it easier. I don't know. I think for us, because I've been involved in a few of the stages since I've been a competitor. I've been there for nearly 4 years now, and I was a part of the Puppinetti's stuff. yeah, that wasn't great, but I personally would I would use probably managed now. I think if you can, I think you would probably start using managed as all the services that you can use. Self-managed is the overhead, all that sort of stuff. I would probably avoid that, especially like Dimple mentioned earlier. If you're a small team and you don't have much expertise, it takes a long time to sort of build up that knowledge to debug a cluster if anything's going wrong, or maintain it. So the opportunity to go to EKS is great for us. So yeah.
I was just while your talk was on, I was just kind of scrolling through my work Slack, where we have an RSS feed from AWS's blog about new services. And whilst we're talking this evening, they've just released a new load balancer controller that can target NLB things, and that's just happening in the background, right? You get all of that for free at that point, right? But it sounds like you started building this before EKS was available. And I think it's fair to say that Amazon were pretty late to the party with a managed Kubernetes offering. Like COPS was obviously the right choice for you at that time. What is your kind of process for? Like, are you currently evaluating EKS? Is it somewhere on a backlog with the hope that you'll get to it at some point when you can stop firefighting problems with your existing cluster?
We are actually aggressively building a new platform on EKS. So we have set our team like a 4-month prototype periods where we will be trying to migrate like at least one simple product team onto EKS and see how we fare. We also want to start using app mesh as well. So we have some exciting.
Yeah, I think for us as a team, we have a lot of legacy custom built stuff that we would love to get rid of, and I think EKS gives us that opportunity to move away from all them tools that that you have to ad hoc change or apply something in there just to accommodate a team or something like that, and I think that's where we want to move away from getting some standardization with community-backed tools and stuff. So
yeah, can you talk a little bit about how you support those teams? Because I think if you're the way you described your working is you're kind of a platform team, right? I think that's in the name of your department. And if you listen to people like Mathew Skelton talking about team designs, like a platform team is sort of an enabler of other teams, right? Providing abstractions and support and that kind of thing. To what extent have you been able to do that versus getting sucked into the whirlwind of dealing with that team's stuff? Because that strikes me as the main sort of problem with the main difficulty kind of striking that balance.
So we are the cloud platform team, as you said, and our customers are the product teams. So whether we run the platform on self-managed clusters or EKS, they don't really care as long as we supply them with a secure, robust, fast performing platform. So the migration, how we deal with the product team is we have an SLA of 99.93%. So that's our uptime that's expected for CompareTheMarket. So as long as we maintain that throughout the year, we are doing what we can for the product teams. And they consist of like, there are 200 members, and in the product team versus 6 of us in the compute platform. So you can imagine like the load that we are battling against each day. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, we kind of take away the overhead of infrastructure away from them. But what we do is we build self-managed tools for them to be able to see what they should be seeing, or they want to see, like the logs and stuff from Kubernetes. Like the open.
Yeah. Just to jump on that as well, I think stuff like any features and functionality that they require, it gets sort of like bottlenecked because of stuff like upgrades. Like as much as we get the being able to upgrade when we want and add features, stuff like that when we want, it means that we have to do it as engineers. We have to do it, and therefore that sort of hinders the process of being able to provide more functionality and features. We have to go, oh, do we want to upgrade this month, or do we want to provide this feature? And we've mentioned a few numbers of how many people are in our team, but we have 6 actual engineers versus a team of 10. So we only have actual 6 people that can do the work, and they vary in skill set. So therefore, we only have so much resource to do all the extra bits, the maintenance, as well as provide the functionality. And I think that's where EKS, managed services is really going to help us as a company.
Yeah, and when you're working with a product team who maybe needs an RDS database or something like that, are you providing that alongside the COPS cluster? Do you use any of the controllers for managing AWS resources from within the Kubernetes ecosystem, or are you kind of, I guess, standing those databases up for the team and giving them the credentials and stuff that they need?
They are sort of. Oh, sorry, you go, Dimple. Looked like you was going to answer that.
Oh no, it's okay. You go.
Yeah, okay, so a lot of our databases are. So we use Mongo, and they're all standalone. So we provide them with the credentials, and and they sort of and we have an actual pillar for managing that. So I think I mentioned inside of the presentation about stateful apps and stuff like that. So we don't have anything like that on our cluster.
Yep.
So I think standalone.
I think that's a sensible choice. I don't think I've seen anything good come of running stateful apps on Kubernetes right now. Maybe if you're watching in the stream and you've successfully run stateful apps on Kubernetes, tell us how. Tell us your secrets. Tell us your ways. So Ratty Miles asks, what kind of logging metrics are you collecting, and what are your contingency plans if they become unhealthy on Kubernetes?
Is this service or cluster?
Well, let's talk about both. Both fairly interesting, I think.
So like with the logins metrics, we obviously have Prometheus exposing those metrics for us, and we obviously have alerts going into our channels to check whether our cluster is up and healthy, if nodes are not are not coming up. I think the good thing about stuff like self-managed in this particular case is that you're able to SSH onto masters, and you can figure out what's going on without having to wait, which is really great. And I think it sort of goes on to his contingency plan. So we do like backups of etcd and stuff, so that we can, if any of our etcd goes down, we can back it up and we don't lose any of our data. So we have also like starting to get DR in place and stuff. So for example, if anything does completely go wrong, AZ go down or anything like that, we could rebuild a cluster within depending on the time it takes to the AZ to come back up. We could be able to spin up a new cluster and be able to serve traffic like that way. So there's a few. I don't know if you want to get involved in the service stuff, Dimple.
Yeah, we do collect app logs as well, but they're not stored anywhere. Like they're not persisted anywhere as of now. But that is something that we are looking to do even we go into EKS. Persist app logs as well, because it will be useful for the developers to have a look at least for like a longer period of time, like more currently it's 2 hours or so, right. More like we can persist it longer. Yeah.
Gotcha. Someone in the Twitch feed asks, I keep saying Twitch feed, it's the Twitch. This is the Twitch feed. They're the Twitch chat. The Twitch chat's asking, Dimple mentioned Lambdas briefly earlier. Are there plans to move or refactor apps into a serverless way of thinking?
Actually quite the opposite, because we are aggressively pursuing EKS. Like we don't want to be supporting more than like a few compute platforms. So we are kind of ditching Lambda, and we are encouraging the other teams to containerize their apps and get them onto Kubernetes. What exists on Lambda, we are going to leave as such, unless they want to get on the new platform.
Right. So it sounds like your team set standards. Essentially, you're pretty much dictating what the dev teams can do. It's not that you're sort of subservient to their needs and requirements. You're kind of saying, here's what we can support for you. Off you go. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
I think off that though, we do have an architectural forum, so developers do get to drive stuff. So as a team, we're only the compute team, and obviously we don't get to make decisions like that. So for example, in Lambda's case, we don't actually get to make that decision. And I think CompareTheMarket's architecture does. So we have forums where the developers will take follow the process, the documentation. If they want to use Lambda, they have to give a reason why. That sort of stuff. I think in our particular case, Lambda was rejected at an architectural level, and was, we've been approved for EKS instead. So we don't kind of get to make those decisions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess in larger businesses, that's often the case, right? You have these sort of central decision-making parts of the organisation that you can feed into, but it sort of it would be inefficient to have everybody deciding what to do willy-nilly across the organisation, right? But I guess the counter view is that unless you allow a bit of freedom, then people get frustrated with what they've got and basically hate you, which is the old sysadmin way, right? You're like, you will use Perl, and you're going to use MySQL, and you're going to use Slackware, and those sorts of conversations don't end up very well for those teams ultimately. Cool. Is there anything that you'd like to plug? Any products? Any more speaking engagements? Anything you're particularly looking forward to at the AWS Summit, Amir?
No, none from me.
No, nothing from me either.
Gotcha. Great. So thanks for joining us this evening, Matt and Dimple. One brief final question from the floor, which is, what is the standard pronunciation? Is it Kubernetes or is it Kubernetes? Let's have that as your last question. Matt, what do you reckon?
I pronounce it Kubernetes, but that's just me. So that's how I like to say it. That's how I pronounce it.
Dimple?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I have no Kubernetes. No.
I'm agreed. Like, it's a Greek word. It comes from ancient Greek, I think. And the Greek people that I've spoken to about this pronounce it Kubernetes. So we should probably listen to the Greeks, I think, given that it's their language, is my view. Thanks for joining us, folks. It's been great to have you on the stream. I hope you'll stick around, answer any more questions that come up in the chat. And otherwise, we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.